This episode is brought to you by Top Notch Cattle Company, raising high-quality registered red and gray Brahmin cattle. Contact Baxter Whitworth at 903-649-9155 or at bbwtopnotchcattle@gmail.com. Welcome to the Cattle Innovation Station podcast,
bringing you the innovative new ways of the cattle industry.
We're your hosts, Baxter Whitworth and Paul Hayes. Together, we're going to be interviewing leaders within the cattle industry.
Here on this podcast, our focus is honoring God and innovating the cattle industry. Get ready to listen, learn, and laugh as we help innovate the cattle industry.
Let's get innovating. Have you been looking for a place to buy top quality AI sire semen or collect a bull of your own? Well, look no further than Elgin Breeding Services. Located in Elgin, Texas, Elgin Breeding Service is not only one of the best breeding services in the business, but also has superior customer service. Contact them at ebsbull@elginbreedingservices.com or by phone at 512-285-2019. Again, that's 512-285-2019. And visit their website at elginbreedingservice.com. It's time for another episode of the Cattle Innovation Station podcast, where we keep you current on beef cattle industry events, help you innovate your herd to turn a profit, and help innovate the beef cattle industry so we can feed more people on less land. I'm your host, Baxter Whitworth, and today we're joined by two very special guests. We're joined by Mr. Brandon Cutrer and his lovely wife, Miss Rachel Cutrer. How are y'all tonight?
Great, thank
Fantastic.
Good to hear. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and start off just by getting to know y'all. So I'm curious because I know we all know that ranching and raising cattle takes a lot of time. But what is y'all's favorite thing to do together outside of raising cattle?
I don't understand the question.
I would say our favorite thing is like going out to eat together, or like going out to a good steakhouse in Houston or something like that.
Sounds good. So you brought up a steakhouse. That ties in nicely. How do you like your steak?
I am a filet mignon medium person. That's what I like.
The older I get, the leaner I like it. So, and here most recently, I love a flat iron steak. And I used to be a ribeye guy, but now flat iron is my preference. Cooked
Sounds
medium.
good. Medium rare. See, I
Right.
think I have to lean towards the medium rare option. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get into our base questions. These are kind of the questions we ask everybody. Just it kind of gives us a great foundation. And so will you tell us about the events in y'all's life that has brought y'all to where you're at today?
Okay, I can summarize really quickly. Brandon and I both grew up in the Junior Brahmin program, showing in the AJBA and our state shows. And there's a bit of an age difference between us. I don't know, is it 7 years, Brandon? Anyway, there's an age difference between us, and we kind of always knew of each other, but we met at the All-American officially like in 2008, I think, and
2008.
started dating. Brandon was the herdsman at Mississippi State at that time, and I was breeding cattle, but a small herd of on my own. And we got married shortly after, and we worked together for the first, 5, 6, 7 years of our marriage for my grandpa at V8 Ranch. And then in 2019, we started BRC Ranch, which is Brandon and Rachel Cutrer. along with our 2 daughters, Molly and Annie, and that is where we are at today.
Sounds great, and we can even later we can even get into talking about how y'all are growing into multiple breeds now, and that's an exciting
Yeah.
thing we can talk about in a little bit. So y'all raise some of the top quality, top tier Brahmins in the breed, and so I just want to know what selection traits y'all think are important for selecting beef cattle.
Well, I would say first and foremost, just the basic function traits: feet, legs, udders, um, reproductive soundness. If you don't have any of that, there's no point in doing the rest of it. And so we consider that our strong foundation and build from that point, um, just for a cow to be a cow. And then after that, we can start adding the bells and whistles.
So I don't know if you consider breed character and good eye appeal bells and whistles. Do you, Brandon? Or
Absolutely.
you do? Okay. So see, like for me, those are non-negotiables, especially in the Brahmin breed. So I think that's why we're a good team because Brandon is very focused on the things that matter, and I am very focused on things that matter to me and matter to the global Brahmin community, and those would be things like maintaining our high breed standards, maintaining those good traits that the Brahmin is known for, while still also being very high quality from a visual standpoint.
So that makes me curious. You talked about holding Brahmins to their breed's high standards. Have you
Mhm.
looked into y'all have gone into Angus and Herefords? Have y'all looked into those breed standards, and have you really honed in on those for your Angus and Herefords as well?
Not necessarily. We still try to breed the best we can because on there are several different facets that we focus on in relations to those breeds. One, we do some purebred seed stock breeding with those, but we also use some for receps as well as we make F1s. So at the end of the day, in that particular one, we're strictly production focused. However, we do a little embryo work, and we do some AIing on what we consider some of the better cows that we've selected for the base traits of uh, feet, udders, fertility, and things like that. But we're trying to mate them to some of each respective breed's top genetics to have um, a desirable product for the bull buyers on the purebred side of it. Have a desirable product um, that would be appealing to just about anybody, whether they're purebred or commercial. So we try to similarly along the same lines throughout all our breeds. No matter what, we like a little pedigree recognition. We like some performance numbers behind those cattle as well. Uh, but no matter what, we have to start off with those foundation uh, traits, and then we go from there. But at the end of the day, no matter what breed we're working with, we try to have upper end seed stock type cattle that will be a benefit to anyone's program, purebred, crossbred, or whatever the case may be.
And that's something I really like about y'all's operation, that y'all are very focused on the customer. But now I think we can move into what makes y'all's interview special, and I'm really excited about this because when you listen to these people that are, maybe CEOs of a really big company, they track everything in their company. And I think that for the cattle industry, that needs to be no different. So I'm excited to talk about record keeping. And that's what we're going to start off with today. And first of all, I'm excited that we have two different people on for the first time. Of course, y'all are still a couple, but y'all still bring a different array of information to the table, and that really excites me. And for Miss Rachel, I think you're really good at, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're really good at tracking the financial side. And Mr. Cutrer, you're good at really tracking the record keeping of the cattle. And so can y'all just kind of explain the differences and importance and which one's important and why the other one's important as well, and the differences between those?
Yeah, I can jump in here and at a very honest and raw answer to this question is these things are important to us because we are operating on borrowed money on a lot of our deals. You know, we didn't inherit any land and we didn't inherit any cattle. So throughout the last 15 years, really, there's never been a time where we didn't have, you know, we weren't using financing to build or grow our operation. So when we started growing and building and taking these risk of having the loans, that can be really stressful. You know, I mean, whether it's a very small loan or a multi-million-dollar loan, if you're people like us who are planners and I would say kind of conservative, like it can weigh on you a lot that you have that much risk. So keeping records is very important to us because these cattle have to make money. They have to pay for themselves, you know. This is not a hobby. Everything we have in our entire life is on the line here with these cattle. And so they have to be able to make money for us and then in turn make money for our customers who buy them. And from a business standpoint, our goal is, you know, anytime we do take out a loan to buy another set of cattle or buy land, at least with cattle, that they're paying for themselves within 3 years. And so the financial measurements come into that, but you can't have successful financial metrics without successful production metrics of they have to have a cap every year. That cap, especially even if it's commercial cap, it needs to bring above market average. And we need to be able to track that so we can keep reducing our risk and hopefully level out. What's the term they said, Brandon? Like for leveling,
Stabilization.
stabilize,
Yes.
stabilize.
When I learned that word, I felt like I had really learned something. I was like, that sounds so legit.
And then in turn, our hope is that we can continue to grow.
Have you been looking for Brahmin cattle with a good genetic background? Contact 79 Cattle Company, selling reliable Brahmin replacement heifers, Brahmin show prospects, and Brahmin bulls. Contact Taylor Tate at 210-241-4511. Again, that's 210-241-4511. Or contact Mallory Tate at 210-861-0155, 210-861-0155. If you truly want your livestock to perform at their best, make sure to contact Vance Aaron, the owner and operator of AFL Livestock Solutions. Vance specializes in magnawave treatments that use pulsed electromagnetic fields, or PEMF, to relieve pain, swelling, and inflammation, caused to help your livestock feel their best. In addition to livestock, Vance can also help you feel better. His treatment works great on sore muscles and joints, along with other mobility issues. His treatments are FDA approved to treat migraines. Aaron Family Livestock Solutions has helped many exhibitors make it to the backdrop with their proven MagnaWave treatments. Don't miss your next backdrop picture. Give Vance a call at 903-720-3184. Again, that's 903-720-3184. Or find them on Facebook at AFL Livestock Solutions. That's great, and that makes me think of something else. Of we have this issue of having to feed more people on less land, and so do you think that y'all making sure that y'all's cattle are profitable and being efficient financially? Do you think that also helps them be more efficient in the goal of feeding more people on less land?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, we haven't really talked much at all about our beef program, but that's one of our businesses, BRC Ranch Beef, and the ranch downtown is a retail store. And so, even every animal and every calf is tracked, whether that's a $50,000 show bull or a steer that goes into the feedlot. We're literally tracking how many pounds of retail product that specific steer produced. and how much that generated in income through our beef program at the store. So every animal in this entire operation is tracked for production efficiency and financial efficiency.
And one thing we always have to keep in mind, the hardest thing to expand because of competition and price and things like that is the land. So that's probably our most fixed, I guess, asset you would have to say. So we have to make every animal work to the best of her ability and be as efficient as possible, and try to make up that way, because we only have so much land. So it's like every cow is paying rent on her spot of the land. So if she's not being productive, we've got to get her out of the way and get somebody else in who can maximize the potential return on the investment for your land.
And that's also something that I'm sure y'all find very important, of making sure that y'all's cattle are not living there rent free, is to keep your analogy going.
That's his department. I am a little more nostalgic, but he's the ruthless culler.
That's another way y'all healthily contrast.
Rachel's great. One time, that sentimental stuff will send you to the poorhouse.
That's right. That's a good title. We may have to think about that. Well, so we for just a second, can we I want to kind of move into particularly talking about the financial records. So we've kind of talked about why this is important already, but what exactly do you track with each animal, or even in general, what do you track for your financial records?
So, at a big picture level, we use QuickBooks Online. And, so from a company standpoint level, we're tracking every category and expenses, from advertising to salaries, um, feed cost, insurance costs, transportation, all of that. We have some big picture categories that we track. Each year we set a budget for each one of those categories, and a very detailed budget. So we know how many head on feed, what their average feed cost is. So we know this is what our expected feed cost is per year. This is what our advertising allocation is. This is what our salaries are, down to the smallest line item possible. And we track that budget versus actuals every single week. So we have sales goals for the year, for the quarter, and for the year in different categories of like live animal sales, semen sales, embryos, meat sales. We track that, and each week we set a benchmark of where we are on track or not on track for those goals, and we adjust accordingly. That's a big picture. And then at an individual level, if we purchase a cow, we track our initial purchase price, and then we every year, you know, take off what her progeny generate and include her salvage value, and hopefully any purchased animal is paid off within 3 years, or preferably less, through her progeny, and then if worst case scenario, her salvage value. And then like on a individual level for sales, we calculate like a profit and loss break even sort of on every head. So in that metric, we're tracking like days on feed, how long they've been on feed, what the feed cost is, if there's an embryo cost, registration cost, dehorning, anything like that. And then for every single animal, we have a net profit or a net loss. So that's important to us because, some simple things we've learned is that bulls that will pass a fertility test at a younger age have fewer days on feed before they can be marketed. So that increased fertility also means more profit for us, because if they could pass a fertility test 3 months earlier than their counterparts, they're much more profitable, and we track, the age of which they're sold, because feed cost is a big factor in that. Embryo profitability versus natural profitability. And I mean, we track a lot of things, but at a big picture, those would be some of the main things that we're tracking.
And that makes a lot of sense. And so this is something I don't know if you have an answer for. I am very curious on this question. I may have asked you before, so I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. But is there a way that you factor in calves that are really good that you keep from that cow? And does that, how do you factor that into her going to pay herself off?
So we don't, and you did ask me that before, and I think this is probably an area that we could improve on. I just don't know how to track it. I mean, to me, if she produces a keeper, Brandon, correct, jump in, but if she produces a keeper animal, does that automatically almost mean she's kind of paid for herself? Or
I don't know. I guess we would have to assume, uh, go through and assign a value to her, what a keeper heifer is worth, and not necessarily what we could sell her for, but at the bare minimum, what the keeper heifer would be worth. And so, but once I have a cow that has a keeper heifer that year, she kind of gets a check mark, like, okay, you're good, and we move on from there, because you are building an asset by keeping that heifer.
Right, and see, that makes sense to me as well.
Mhm.
Well, now we're going to switch over to the opposite side and talk about production records. And so we've kind of talked about how this is important because it plays back into the role of, without the production records, the financial records really wouldn't be much help because we wouldn't know how that cow is paying for herself or how she's doing. So what exactly do you track within that, and how do you track that?
EP Cattle Company. Owned by Eddie Wilson, EP Cattle Company is home of Sir Rouse Handshake. Rouse Handshake is a sound-structured, heavy-muscle bull that is really bold-ribbed. So it comes with no surprise that he is a Fort Worth and San Antonio Junior Show Division Champion and Rio Grande Valley Open Show Division Champion. He is a grandson of BRC Noble and JDH Shank Manso, and is also a great-grandson of Mr. H. Elijah Manso. You can contact Eddie Wilson or Nicole Wilson on Facebook at EP Cattle Company. So remember, if you're looking for some well-performing, registered Brahmin genetics, contact Eddie Wilson on Facebook.
Infinity Cattle Services, owned by Chris Shivers, is glad to be a sponsor of the Cattle Innovation Station podcast. Infinity Cattle Services, a unique, vision-driven, service-oriented company committed to developing successful revenue-producing cattle operations, is a full-service consulting and marketing firm specializing in Brahmin and Brahmin-influenced cattle. Contact them today to learn more about how they can assist you with locating cattle, cattle mating, sale management, marketing, communications, record keeping, data submission, and a wide array of other services. They can be reached at 713-202-1747. Again, that's 713-202-1747, or at infinitycattleservices@gmail.com. That is infinitycattleservices@gmail.com. Visit their website at infinitycattle.com or check them out on Facebook and Instagram.
On the production side, I try to track as much as possible. And because me, I have a terrible memory. And so for me to be able to keep up with progress or find out if there are areas of improvement that are needed, or if you've made progress and are working towards something, a lot of times if you're dealing with larger numbers of cattle, and then in my case, it doesn't, it could be 2 cows and I'd still lose track. So I write everything down and or put it in the computer or things like that. If I see anything, if a cow's in heat, I write it down. But like every calf that's born, we try to collect as much performance data as possible, from birth weights to calf vigors to calving ease scores, mothering ability, teat and udders, and all that kind of stuff. But we track all those metrics all the way through weaning, yearling. We take carcass ultrasound, and just try to keep up with as much stuff as we possibly can. And just because I like to see trends over time. And if something is becoming a problem, you can pick up on it quicker. If you're keeping track of everything, you start to notice the trends, and you can course correct if needed.
I'll jump
And
in and I want to add to this because in our workflow, Brandon writes everything down. And then at some point, we translate everything into a giant spreadsheet, which we call our digital branding book. We call his pocket branding book just like the branding book, but we have a digital branding book and we translate all of that into the digital branding book. And I just looked it up, but right now we have 2,300 data entry, 2,300 head that we have data on. And so once we get it into that digital format, the sky is the limit on what we can calculate. You know, we can do birth weight by year, birth weight trends, birth weight by sire, birth weight by cow family, you know, for every single data point that we have. And so if at any time anybody has a question about how our cattle perform or how our cattle can be measured, we can pretty much go to that digital branding book, figure out the formula, and we can have that answer. And that answer is backed up by real numbers, not just a gut feeling, you know?
Yeah, no, everything that we collect is actual observation of whether we saw it or we collected the accurate information.
right, and I love finding truths of stuff that works and what doesn't, and that's a truth that goes back to what you were talking about earlier with sometimes we have those sentimental things that are hard to let go of, which I know I've had those with starting my herd, and that sometimes it's not profitable and you have to choose, well, does this mean more to me than the profit that would otherwise be made? And sometimes every once in a while it can, so you just have
Back,
to choose there. But
Baxter, whenever I said we had 2,300 data points, I saw your face light up. And I'm like, Baxter wants to see this spreadsheet, don't you?
I would love to see this spreadsheet. Not necessarily the entries, but the layout of it of how you take your records. But
You showed me
oh,
yours at what was it, the state show or the All American, and it was very similar on the stuff that we would be collecting.
yes, sir. Well, and I'm not using it every day as much probably as much as you are, but uh it's the calves come in, I hope to use it more. But
Yeah, yeah.
so we've talked about how that ties into your financial records, but when you find or when you think of a new data point or metric to take or something to look at when it comes to records, have you seen how that helps you become more profitable, or is it just something that becomes nice to track, or does it depend on the trait?
I guess it could be a little bit disjointed because me personally, I get that it's part of the reason we make such a good team because I don't care anything about the money. I don't care if we make money or not because I love doing what I'm doing and I do it because I'm working to improve the cattle. But to be able to do that, she keeps my feet to the fire and say, okay, but we got to be making money. And so that's why we work together so good. And because she helps me keep track of all that stuff because money not even on my mind.
So let me give you a really good real world example of that. So one thing we track is birth weights. And we have noticed over the last few years, our birth weights have been creeping up. For us to be considered a low birth weight bull, it's 79 pounds or less. But since 2018, our average birth weight in our herd of a bull has been over 79 pounds. So, and not much, but you know, it's like 80, 81. You know, for this year, our average birth weight of a bull born at BRC is 81 pounds. So, then taking that to the financial metrics, my average price of a high birth weight bull is somewhere around like $7,500. My average price of a low birth weight bull is somewhere around $10,000. So there's a $2,500 difference. If I could just get my birth weights down consistently lower than 79 pounds per head, I'm getting a $2,500 premium because a low birth weight bull is more versatile, right? So you may have seen a couple weeks ago, we bought a bull at Kemper Cattle Company. It's the first time we bought a bull on in an online sale in I don't know how long, 10 years maybe. But that was a very specific objective of buying a low birth weight bull. What was his birth weight, Brandon?
I think
56
his actual birth weight was 56 pounds or something like that. And he was well below breed average on his birth weight EPD to really help us try to pull things down. And a lot of the other traits weren't necessary. He wasn't going to hurt us really anywhere, but he would sure help us pull down a lot of the important traits that we're looking for and really complement our cattle on multiple levels.
So that's like a real world example of how we're using these numbers to make better decisions and hopefully improve our bottom line.
And were you going to say something, Ms.?
Hmm.
Well, I hope the listeners to this episode are really hearing that, because you said a $2,500 difference on one calf. That's $2,500 on two calves. And that's $5,000, and then that just keeps growing from there and there. And so, if you can consistently increase that, that's going to make a big difference. And so, I hope it becomes apparent how record keeping can really lead to the profitability.
Yeah. And it's not
Uh,
necessarily once you realize there's a problem, turn and run the other way. It's try to just dial it back to that sweet spot. Instead of chasing extremes or fads and stuff like that, just try to dial it back and forth between what you might consider a sweet spot to kind of keep you in the middle of the road. And that's always very important, because a good, solid middle of the road animal will always outsell, in terms of consistency, the extremes. And you have
right.
less fallout and throwaways.
And see, that makes sense to me, because we all need, while we might be looking for certain traits, nobody wants a animal to be bad in a certain trait. And so I think I understand what you're saying there, and that makes sense.
You want them to check as many boxes as possible.
That's true. Are you looking for high quality hay that is priced well? Then make sure to visit Threadgill Hay Company. They have fertilized horse jigs and Tifton 85. They carry square bales and round bales. Their square bales are $8 a bale, and their 4x6 round bales are $50 per roll. That's a nice price and good quality. They're located outside of Mount Enterprise, Texas, and they will gladly give you more details when you contact them. Speaking of contacting them, you can reach out by texting Sawyer Poole at 903-646-4741 or Ronald Threadgill at 903-235-2011. So, y'all have started y'all's herd, and y'all have been very, very successful, and y'all have built a great system, as we just saw a second ago, with showing how y'all can, a system that's shown y'all how and where you can grow to be more profitable. But something that I've also seen that you have talked about, Mr. Cutrer, and both of y'all have really, but I want to hone in on something, and that's finding a good investment in cattle. And a lot of times, people might buy a calf that they think is the best because it might have the higher price tag on it, or you might be buying it from a certain place. But Mr. Cutrer, I want to know, how can you find those investments in cattle that are those really good investments?
Sometimes it's straight luck. But no matter what, you have to come up with an animal that's within your budget, that works within your production system. So if no matter what, there's always those non-negotiables that you can't sacrifice, and things that are from feet and udders and all that. Once you have that, those cattle are easy to sell. It's just how much of the other stuff that you can add on while maintaining enough marketability, because it's they've got to look good no matter what, because people are at the end of the day, everybody wants to look at their cattle and say, man, I got a nice set of cows. but they have to have good udders and good feet and things like that. And they also have to have product muscle and be able to grow, because that's ultimately what we're doing. So you have to find the cattle that meet as many things as possible, or at least if you're looking for an outside animal to bring in, one that doesn't set you back in all the areas you've made progress, but complements the cattle. And so that's kind of what you're always looking for, is the complementarity without sacrificing the stuff that you've really spent, you may have spent a long time putting a lot of work into.
That makes sense, and that's something that I've seen personally, watched y'all and seen the bulls that y'all have on y'all's websites that y'all didn't breed, and I've watched y'all be very methodical about how you choose the genetics that y'all bring into y'all's herd. And I think it's cool how y'all bring new genetics into your herd, but you're also very careful about how you do it.
That's right.
We're not finished talking about this topic. We will be back in the next episode with this topic, but before we go, we want to bring you our pro tip session. So our pro tip question for this episode goes to you, Miss Rachel, and we want to know, what is your pro tip to find wasteful spending in your cattle operation?
Okay, so I would say get as detailed as possible, like literally every transaction, like categorize every transaction. We put that into a spreadsheet, of course, and we track every single bill payment, every single line item on a credit card we track. And that can help you find, sometimes it can help you find basic things, like maybe you're paying for 2 subscriptions to Microsoft Word and you didn't realize it, and you cut that and you save that. Or maybe you don't realize how much you're spending on eating out for dinner and you need to start eating at home, so we literally track down to each transaction and we try to have a budget for that. And so I think, it's easy to just kind of whip out your credit card sometime and spend, but you need to categorize everything. And also think about like your multipliers of things. So like when we go to a show, for example, we're gonna stay at a hotel, obviously, but when we take our full show crew, we might have to get 5 hotel rooms and we might be staying for 5 nights. So 5 hotel rooms at 5 nights, that's 25. That's a multiplier of 25. So even if it's just saving $10 on a room, but $10 per night per 5 rooms, it can add up. So we just try to watch literally every penny and try to be conservative, as conservative as possible. We're alumni of the Dave Ramsey program. We don't do it anymore, but when we first got married, that's what we did. And a lot of that still translates into today. It's just at a much larger scale.
That's I've been on a Dave Ramsey kick lately, his podcast. But anyways, this is the Cattle Innovation Station podcast, and we'll be back. And make sure to follow and like this episode and share it with your friends so they can gain the knowledge that you've gained. Until next time, keep innovating the cattle industry. Signing off. Hello, guys. Thank you for listening to the Cattle Innovation Station podcast. We want to make this podcast better. So if you would, please like this episode and leave us feedback in the comment section. Something else that helps make this podcast better is when you respond to the polls. So if you're able, please respond to our polls. Help us make this podcast as good as possible. Thank you, God bless, and have a good day.